Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is AudreySA.2310733014 and my register number is 2310733014. In this topic 7, I will explain to you about the 5 learning focus. First is about the lingua franca, and then next about the pidgin, and then next about the Creole, and then the linguistic characteristic of pidgin and Creole, and then the last one is about mixed language. So on this 5 learning focus, the two things that I first heard is about the pidgin and Creole. So I really interesting about this one because this was my first time to hearing that topics. So first one, I will start about the lingua franca. Lingua franca is as I being a student in English department, I already hear this word for not so long, but I already hear this word like too many times, but I just don't read deeply about this. So we know that a lingua franca is a language that it used by people that who have a different native language in order to communicate with each other. So the main idea is about the communications, but when people do not share their same first language, but they need a common language, and that is what we call a lingua franca. So for example, we know that today that English was a very common language, and then the most used by people, and then I think the basic people in this world will have was English, because this was a common lingua franca. People from different countries like Indonesia, Japan, Germany may all use English to communicate, even though it is not their first language, because all of that things, how we communicate with someone from another country is we use one language that really common and used by globally. An important point that is not everyone speak a lingua franca in the same way. So some people are very fluent, and then someone else were still learning, and then another one will only know a basic one. But this is okay, because the goal of the lingua franca is not perfections, but how we communicate with each other, and how the message are delivered correctly. So I know that I heard from my lecturer, and then this one was very good, and then helped me to learn that the good English is when you can deliver your message. It's not about how fluent you are, how the pronunciations are really good or not, but it's how you succeed to deliver the message that you want to tell to someone. And then I will go to the pigeons. Oh my god, was very unique for me, because it's my first time to hear this word, because I don't even know what is it. And then after I read that, I simplify that a pidgin was a language that developed when people who do not share their common language to need to communicate. I'm sorry. So this is usually happen in situations like trading, migrations, or like how do I say it, colonizations or something like that. So in the informations of pidgins, there is usually one dominant language that called a super straight language. So this language provide most of vocabulary than are the other local language. So it's called Subert's language, which influence pronunciations and grammar that we use. So because people do not fully learn the dominant language, the pidgins become simplified. For example, the grammar is reduced, the vocabulary is limited, and the structure is less complex than language itself. So another important characteristic from the pidgins that I found is that not a native language. So no one is born speaking as pidgin as their first language. It's only used for specific purposes like trading or working. So we can say that pidgin is simple, functional language created for communications between groups who do not share the language. So I know that pidgins I know what I want to say, like pidgins is some that people in the community that makes their own language. So it is really unique for me because this how do I say that, this how they communicate with each other with their community is unique because they're making their own language. And then next to the unique word for me is Creole. So Creole is a language that develops from a pidgins when it becomes more complex and it's learned as a first language by children. Wow. So this process is called now I don't know. This call is like notifications or something like this. So at first, like a pidgin is limited and simple, but when the children grow up in daily life, they expand it. They add more grammar, more vocabulary, and use many different situations. As a result, that the language is a fully developed system, which we call a Creole. I don't know how to pronounce it really fix, but there's also a concept called the life cycle model, and which show that development from a jargon to a development to a gradual, and the boundary between pidgins and Creole is not always easy to define. Like the difference between that was not really easy. So if we talk, it's connecting between the linguistic character of Pidgin and Creole language for our next topics. So pidgins are usually characterized by simplifications. They are having simple grammar, fewer rules, and unlimited vocabulary. The pronunciation systems is also simpler rather than pidgin. So it's fewer sounds compared to the original language. So pidgins are also use limited functions. For example, they are used for trade and basics communications, but not for educations, literature, or formal situations. So on the other hand, Creole are more developed than pidgins. So they have more complex grammar, more vocabulary, and all aspect of life, such as daily conversations we can do in educations, or like we are doing a storytelling. So one every important point is that both pidgins and Creole is a systematic language. Like I know that they're not incorrect or broken forms of other language, but each has its own characteristic and their rules, and they must be learned like any other language. So yeah, it's like a unique things for me. And then we go next to the mixed language. So mixed language are different from pidgin and Creole. Really, they're really different, the definition. So they are formed by combining the elements from two or more language, but they're not in simplified way. So mixed language usually develop how the bilingual or the multi-bilingual people or community where people already speak more than one language, instead of simplifying, they combine the features from different language into one system. So the main difference between pidgin and Creole often arise from their need to communicate without a shared language. So while mixed language areas arise in communities where people already know multiple language. And then I think that is for my understanding from all of this. And I find out that Creole and pidgins was really out of my mind because I don't really understand at first, like what is really happening in here, like what is the meaning of literally all of that. And I think that's it for my reading report. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.